You probably think the phrase, an eye for an eye, came from the Bible, right? But the truth is a bit more interesting. This phrase is actually much older. In fact, it dates back approximately 4,000 years. It was carved onto a large black stone by an ancient king. You probably think the phrase, an eye for an eye, came from the Bible, right? But the truth is a bit more interesting. This phrase is actually much older. In fact, it dates back approximately 4,000 years. It was carved onto a large black stone by an ancient king. Now, let's take a closer look at this story. Who is Hammurabi? Why does he matter? Hammurabi was the sixth king of the city of Babylon, located within what is now the borders of Iraq. He ruled between 1792 BC and 1750 BC. At that time, Babylon was not a massive empire, it was just one of many city-states in the Mesopotamian region. But it was Northwest ordinary place. It was one of the birthplaces of civilization. Many fundamental developments such as writing, agriculture, and most importantly, law, emerged here. Over time, Hammurabi waged wars, formed alliances, and expanded Babylon. What's interesting is that he wasn't just a warrior. He had canals built to boost trade, repaired old infrastructure, and even forgave the debts of society. In other words, he was both powerful and, in the eyes of his people, a leader who got things done. But what truly set him apart from other leaders was the importance he placed on law. Because life back then was genuinely complicated. Society was divided into three groups: at the top, the elite class known as Amalu; in the middle, the free but landless Mushkanu; and at the bottom, the slaves, Ardo. Everyone had different rights and punishments. On top of that, as trade grew, disputes, debts, and theft made maintaining balance increasingly difficult. Hammurabi said, "This can't go on like this." And he built a system to bring order to everything, the Code of Hammurabi. These laws were not just a few articles. It was a detailed system of 282 provisions covering every aspect of life, from family to commerce, from crimes to punishments. Moreover, they were inscribed on a large stone for everyone to see, like the billboard of the ancient world. At the top of the stone is a scene depicting Hammurabi with Shamash, the god of justice, and the laws are written below. This stone was found in Susa, Iran in 1901 and is still on display at the Louvre Museum today. The language of the laws is also quite clear: if you do this, then this will happen. For example, if you steal someone's ox, you repay 30 times its value. If you commit theft, the punishment can be death. Yes, it sounds harsh, because it truly was. The idea of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, comes from exactly this. The laws were so strict that they were designed to deter crime. Society became reluctant to break the law. But it's not just about punishments. The economic side is quite fascinating as well. Hammurabi had fixed prices for certain professions. For example, a surgeon's fee varied according to the patient's status. And if the surgery failed, the punishment could be quite severe. Wages weren't set arbitrarily either. People earned according to the value they produced. In other words, it was a very early version of what we today call the more you work, the more you earn. It was the first time this principle was put into practice. Trade was also tightly regulated. Interest rates were fixed, 33% for grain, 20% for silver. Contracts had to be in writing. No one could say, "That's not what I meant." And anyone who cheated faced serious consequences. The rules were clear and straightforward. The matter of debt is also interesting. If you couldn't repay your debt, you could temporarily hand over your family into servitude. But this situation didn't last forever, 3 years at most. In the 4th year, freedom was guaranteed. This is essentially an early form of a debt forgiveness system. In short, Hammurabi's laws laid the foundation for many financial concepts we still use today: contracts, credit, interest, and liability. Even centuries later, they remain very much alive. Of course, not everything was perfectly ideal. For instance, there was no concept of supply and demand, prices were fixed. The tax system was not clearly defined. Punishments were excessively harsh. and debt-based slavery was a serious ethical problem. But still, consider this, a system written 4,000 years ago still influences our world today. The foundations of concepts such as justice, transparency, and accountability were laid back then. In short, Hammurabi was not just a king, he is one of the invisible architects of today's systems.